Oh my goodness. Okay, I hope I'm live. I'm gonna check. I am so sorry for anybody who is waiting. I've had the worst connectivity issues today, and I don't know if this is gonna look different to you. I'm actually on my laptop, which I never use to do these, um, but I cannot get my larger computer to share the slideshow that I wanted to share with you guys. So, yeah, sorry about that. Hopefully, you're able to see and hear me just fine because I really had to battle for this. And I thought, well, I could just go offline and just talk to you guys about my top 10 genealogy pages. But really, this is one of those things where seeing is, well, not seeing is believing, but seeing is definitely understanding. So, again, I'm hoping that you can see me. I'm hoping that you can hear me, and we're going to go through. Now, I want to stress that this top 10 list, it's my personal list. It's, I thought long and hard about this because people always ask, okay, so what pages do I really need in each chapter? You know, what do I have to have? And the hard truth is that it's just going to change for every ancestor. But I do have some pages that I just go back to over and over again. So um, that's what this list is. This list is not pages that you have to use. It's not the best pages necessarily. There might be pages that I list in here that you think I never use that page, and other ones that you can't believe I'm not including. But right now, for me, this is my truth. This is my top 10 useful genealogy pages, all of which are pretty much in every ancestor chapter that I've created. All right, let me just. Oh, okay. I was just trying to make sure if people could hear me. And yes. Oh, wait, no. It's my truth. This is my top. I can see the screen, but not you. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Sorry. All right. No, you be quiet. Oh, I'm now coming through on multiple devices, which is um, the opposite of the problem that I was having earlier. Okay. Number one, gold standard, use it all the time. Everybody should have one, the Ancestor Profile page. This is what I start all of the Ancestor chapters with. I've talked before about how you can use a different page. This is the one that I go with. So every single person, as long as I have a name for that ancestor, they have an Ancestor Profile page. Originally, the profile page had boxes on the top that you could fit photos into. I got a lot of feedback from people who didn't like the boxes, and now I do prefer this style, where it just has this big open space at the top for photos. But I still sort of I lean towards doing at least a couple of photos. I like having photos that show the person at different ages. And, I mean, of course, if I only have one photo, then I'll do, a cropped long photo. Sometimes if I don't have any photos at all, I'll use a headstone or some heirloom or something that I have. But when I have multiple photos, I like to do a little mini collage. So the reason that the Ancestor Profile got the number one spot is because I absolutely just don't have an Ancestor chapter that doesn't have this page. This is my favorite overview, lots of information at a glance way to start the chapter, and make sure that I have that person in the book with their index number and their name and the relationship to the root person, even if I have no other information about that person. So when you've got, the random great great grandmothers and all you have is a first name that happened that you saw on a marriage record, and you don't have any other information about that person, you just know that there was a Susanna who was your great great grandmother, she's still going to have a page in my book, and the only thing that it's going to have on it is relationship to root person, great great grandmother, name Susanna, and then whatever her index number is, but that page is still going to be in there. Number two is the index. I mean, it's kind of cheating because the index isn't one page, the index is multiple pages, but I feel like um, the pre-printed index is the heart of the book because it gives you a way to organize all of your ancestors, and it gives everybody a place to put all of their stuff. So, the paternal great grandmother, who's the parent of number 5, she's always going to be number 11 according to this index. So any pages that you have for her, any notes, anything that you have for her is going to have that little 11 down in the corner where it says index number, and all of her stuff's going to stay together. That is really, I feel like, the core of the system. Now, I'm cheating in two ways. One, I'm cheating by only showing you this page, one page of the index and saying that this is a favorite page when in reality the index is like 6 pages long. The other way I'm cheating is I'm showing you the male first index because it's the most popular and it's the one that comes with the deluxe bundles. Personally, I actually use the female first index. I thought about putting that in here because this is my top 10 list, but I didn't want to confuse anybody. For those of you who don't know the difference between male first and female first, in the male first index, the one that you're looking at, the fathers are listed before the mothers. In the female first index, the mothers are listed before the fathers. It doesn't substantially change anything, it just shuffles the index numbers up. But I had always listed the mothers before the fathers and put their chapters in first, and that really threw a lot of people off, surprisingly. So I guess it just depends on how your brain organizes information. Number 3, death records checklist page. So when I first created pages, for those of you who don't know the backstory, I created genealogy pages to use myself and then used them for more than a year before it occurred to me to consider, selling them and seeing if anybody else was going to be interested. So when I made pages, I made a lot of them with these checklists down the side. And that was because I was creating pages and doing the work while simultaneously learning about genealogy and, getting my footing and starting to understand that there was more than, just a few types of death records out there. So I needed the checklist because I could not hold all the different sources in my head at that time. I'm better about that now. I mean, I'm quite a few years into doing genealogy, almost every day. But for death records, for whatever reason, I still prefer the checklist. I think part of it's because I don't usually have a whole lot of photos and I don't need a whole lot of space on the death records page. So I don't feel like I want that larger photo area that you get when you remove the checklist. The death records page that comes in the deluxe bundle does not have the checklist because so many people wanted me to take the checklist off of these pages so they could have more space to write. But the checklist pages are still available. If you're interested in them, you can reach out to me. They're also listed for sale, but it's really just a preference thing. And I kind of jump around now. I don't use the checklist pages for all the records, but for death records, I like the checklist page. And death records made the number 3 spot because death records are often the easiest to find when you're really starting from nothing with an ancestor, just because death records are always going to be the most recent record that you have of that ancestor because it's the last records that they had. Okay, again, this one might kind of come out of left field for some of you because I don't know how popular this page is, but I love the children page. The children page has spots at the top for the 2 parents' names, and you'll notice that it does say parent. It does not say mother and father. That's because the page is intentionally gender free so that it works for all families. And then the children section, there's a little place for a photo. There's a place where you can mark, was this child adopted, a stepchild, or born out of wedlock. And then there's small fields for putting in really basic information, date and place of birth, date and place of death, and then some room down there for listing spouses and children. Now, as the primary place we are going to put all of the information in about a child, this page does have some limits, most notably that there's not a whole lot of space ultimately for spouse and children. If somebody was married 4 times and had 17 children, you're really going to have a hard time fitting them on this page. But I do have a child profile, I have son profile, I have daughter profile, I have other ways for you to put in information about a particular child. Most of my ancestors, however, had children whose information fits rather tidily into these pages, and I like being able to see the children together listed out like this. I always list them oldest to youngest, and I just use as many children pages as necessary to get the whole family in there. So that's why I got the number 4 spot. Okay, marriage records. Now, marriage records is another page that had the checklist originally, but I prefer it without the checklist. I think you guys were right because especially if I've got a wedding photo, I want to be able to see the largest version of that photo that I can without diminishing photo quality. And when it comes down to it, I haven't had as much trouble finding marriage records. Marriage records in a way are a little more, not more standard than death records, but I guess at least for me, searching for marriage records has been a little more intuitive. And once you found the marriage record, it's easy to find other records that back that up. But I also, as long as I find a marriage record, usually I don't feel like I have to sort of cross-check that. Whereas with death records, sometimes the cemetery information is different than the hospital information, which is different than information that showed up in a family letter. I feel like marriage records, people were recording those events very quickly as they happened. And most of the time, one marriage record is still going to give you pretty good information. The only time that I've seen that be not true is when somebody's fibbing marriage information to accommodate a birth that happens, 3 months after the couple was wed. Okay, number 6, census page. This is another one where I'm kind of cheating because not everybody's going to find census pages incredibly helpful because you may not have ancestors who were on censuses that I've created worksheets for. However, if you've got ancestors in the United States for a few generations, the US censuses are really helpful. And I've also made census pages for the UK, for Canada, and I'm working through getting census pages done for other places as well. I love the census pages because they force me to really look at the census. The census is such a fantastic resource for genealogical research. And yet, it's funny, I do think that people collect census pages, but then they kind of fly past them. And you really want to get into the meat of a census and understand that not only are you looking at that family snapshot in time, which hopefully is at least close to the truth for that family. I'm not going to get into why there were reasons to have misinformation on censuses, but you've got this snapshot, and you also want to remember that just looking at the head of household and going across and getting his information or her information if she's widowed or single, that's still not going to give you all the information for everybody in the household. So I actually like to, at least for the direct ancestors, I like to pull them out of each census and focus on them and write down their information in these worksheets. So if I can, I always have census pages in my ancestor chapters, which is why this is number 6. And then number 7 is related. I love the census comparison page. I've used census comparison tables for a long time. And what that is you're just tracking a person across their various censuses. Again, kind of cheating. If you don't have ancestors who are in multiple censuses, this won't be interesting to you. But if you do have somebody who, in this sample, I found a census for this person for 1900, 1910, 1920, 1930. And he's listed with similar information, same spelling, but in this table, I have the members of his household listed, and it shows, differences in the spellings of their names, slight variations in birth dates, and also just the way that his household changed as he had more children and, the death of his spouse and things like that. So I really like census comparison tables because, this census page pulls a lot of information out of that particular snapshot in time. And then this census comparison page gives you the decade by decade story of how this person's family was changing over this span of 40 years, 30 years. Yeah. Okay, so that's number 7. Number 8, photo family tree. I love this page. Again, I don't know how popular this one is with everybody, but I use this page all the time. So this is a photo page that gives a great look at a whole family together, and it has just enough space to provide names, and then I like to provide birth dates, but you could put in whatever you wanted if you wanted to do, index numbers, if you're indexing each person individually, anything like that. One thing I wanted to say about the photo family tree immediate family page is that I often have more than one of these in one person's chapter. I will have the photo family tree for the person once they become a parent, and it shows their spouse and then all of their children. But I'll also include it if I have them as a child, showing their parents and their siblings. Even if I have the same page in their parents chapter, just because people ask, well, how do you put siblings into the book and stuff like that? It can, depending on how you're choosing to do it, maybe you're going to be putting them in as siblings or putting them in as children of a higher up ancestor, or the next generation up. But I like to show people with their siblings. I mean, you have to remember that a person's immediate family when they're a child is different than the immediate family when they're an adult. And you also might get immediate families that shift. The person that we're looking at had a bazillion children. there are actually enough children that they don't all fit on this page. And so I could have done a photo family tree with him and his first wife and their children, and then him and his second wife and their children. Um, I just don't have a photo of his first wife, and I actually don't have a photo of the other child that doesn't fit on the family tree, so it was tidier to just do it this way. Okay, number 9, timeline page. So I didn't actually show you the blank page and then a sample because I wanted to show this photo. I really like the left-hand, right-hand spread for timelines. I make every single ancestor a timeline because it helps me understand where the gaps are in my research, and then occasionally something will jump out and I think, okay, that doesn't match up. And it makes me realize that I have been following a paper trail for somebody who isn't my ancestor. So the timeline page is a year by year account of where the person was, where, documents that you've got, events, things that happened. So once I have a birth and death date, I will just go through and do the age and the year on each line for as many timeline pages as I need to for that person. And then I'll go through and add in the documents that I have showing, the event and where the person was. Occasionally, I'll have all of a sudden, the person turns 26 and there's like 9 different documents that show different things. And if there's really a lot of activity, then I'll go back and I'll actually adjust the timeline so that, age 27 actually has 5 spots that I can show the different locations. That doesn't happen for most of my ancestors, though. There weren't a lot of people who lived in multiple states in the same year of their life. So, and if you have a whole lot of records for somebody, but basically all of the records are because that person was in the military at that age at this one place, you don't have to list all of the records. You're just making a timeline. The timeline's kind of for you and for anybody else who's enjoying the family history book that you've put together so that you can understand what was going on in that person's life. And you'd be surprised once you put timelines together how much you might not have for that person for, a 15 or 20 year span where you think, okay, that person was somewhere doing something. But especially for older ancestors, it's possible that whatever they were doing just wasn't creating a paper trail. So this is especially true for women. But I like having the timeline because it also then makes me stop and think, wait a second, is there anything that I can do to come up with a record for this person at 12 years old? Where can I possibly look? Is there a directory? Is there a church family listing? Is there a newspaper article, an obituary for somebody else that might at least mention this person? So I really like the timeline. And number 10 may surprise you. It's the blank page. I love the blank page. I use the blank page more than any other page. And, I have the ability, obviously, to make whatever genealogy pages that I want to in whatever color I want to. But I love the blank page. I use it for really large photos. I use it when I'm putting together notes and mysteries and hashing things out. I scribble things down. I use the blank page sometimes to hold information that I know I have a worksheet for, just because in the heat of the moment, I don't want to stop and find that template and import it and make it look all pretty. So I'll throw stuff on a blank page and then come back to it later. I love the blank page. Why would you want to have my blank page versus your blank pages that come, with every Word document processing thing you have? Well, because mine have the pretty colors and they have the index number down in the corner. But yes, blank pages for the win. Some honorable mentions. It was hard because I thought about expanding this to the top 20 or the top 15, but I didn't want to overwhelm everybody. I do have a couple of things that are in everybody's chapter that I didn't include. For me, I have a like a research tracker, research log for each person because I can't remember who I worked on when. There's too many different family trees that I'm working on at any given time. And I have a source citations page. I use the source citations lined. When I add an ancestor chapter, when I have great grandmother Susanna and her index number and I don't have anything else, I'll put in the ancestor profile, and then I actually go ahead and tuck in a lined source citations page right after that with her index number, even if I don't have sources yet, because I want to have that page ready for whenever I do find sources. You'll see in a lot of these samples, I don't have source information listed on the pages, which again, totally personal preference, and I know that it drives some people crazy. That's because I like to keep all of my sources together on the source citations page. And I don't have, my notebooks are not running around exploding where you've just got loose pages everywhere. I suppose that could happen. But if you're looking at a marriage records page in one of my ancestor chapters, the source citations page is like 5 or 6 pages away at the most, at the end of that chapter. So it's not necessary, I don't think, for me to have all of the source citation on every single page. However, again, I know for a fact that there are people that disagree with that, who feel like you really should not, it's irresponsible to be creating genealogy pages that may get shared on their own without the source citations, and then you're just spreading around information and nobody knows where to look to back up your work. I completely understand that. It's an aesthetic thing. It's just, it just makes the page a little more noisy to have all the source citations. And for people who are reading the family history book who aren't really into genealogy, I think that not only do they not want that and they don't understand it, I think that that can make the page look unfriendly and a little overwhelming. I feel like, well, I don't want my books to be underwhelming. Like that's not the right, word, but I think friendly. I want the notebook to be as friendly to my extended family as possible, because the whole point of all of this is that I'm trying to make my family history tangible and accessible to people for whom it's important without them having to feel like the hobby of genealogy is important, if that makes sense. All right. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that I'm coming through okay. It drives me crazy that I have no idea when I'm on my computer if you guys can hear or see me. Let me go back and we'll look for comments really quick. Hello. Oh, Jane's hot in the UK again. Coming through fine. Good. Good afternoon. Hello. Look at all of you guys all over the place. All right. Thank you for joining me. And yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you have other pages that you use all the time, leave a comment. Let people know, because I get that question so often. People are dying to know. All right. I will be back on Friday. See you then.